All right, we're learning parshat EMOR. And here we have a parsha packed with commandments, packed with beautiful, beautiful commandments, 63 of them, 63 commandments. And so we went over some of them. We're going to go over some more. And it also has over here, this week's Torah portion contains in it all of the holidays, contains all the holidays. And beginning with the first holiday and the first month of the year, which is Passover, begins with the first holiday of Passover. So let's have a little look here at some of the commandments that we had. Let's see where they are. And here we have some of the commandments. Oh, and this we sort of skipped before here. So we had all these commandments about the Kohanim, who a Kohen is allowed to marry, who he's not allowed to marry, he's not allowed to be defiled, he can't make himself impure, etc. Here's some of the commandments. Here we go. Good. Here we have some of the commandments we did yesterday. We did some of these commandments yesterday. Remember, a Kohen, the high priest, cannot get married to a divorced woman. In addition to this, he also can't get married to the high priest. He can't get married to a widow. A widow. And there's also the commandments that come, shalom. Then a regular priest cannot. A regular priest can get married to a widow. That's permissible, but he can't get married to a divorced woman. And here we have a woman. He can't get married to a zona. Also, a zona is loosely translated as a prostitute, but it's not really. It means any woman that had ever had relations with a man that was forbidden to her to get married to. So she can't. It's forbidden, universally forbidden for all Jews, like it had relations with a non-Jew. A Kohen can never get married. A zona and a halala. Halala, there's different laws. We talked about that yesterday. But generally speaking, a woman who is a product of a forbidden relationship between a Kohen. For instance, a Kohen gets married to a divorced woman, and the child that they have is called a halala. Can't get married. A Kohen cannot get married. And the Kohen Gadol is not, the high priest is not allowed to defile himself. Can't even come to a tent where a holy person or a dead person is. A Kohen Gadol can't take like we said, a widow, and etc. All the things that the regular Kohen cannot, the women that the regular Kohen cannot marry, this Kohen cannot, high priest also cannot marry, but in addition to that, high priest cannot marry a widow. Regular priest can. Yes, also he can't have relations with her. If he does, it's two sins, getting married to her and having relations with her. A Kohen that has a blemish cannot serve in the temple. A blemish. What are the blemishes? Most of them are also the same blemishes that are on animals. You can't have. So it says altogether there are it says there are 90 different blemishes there are on the Kohen. Cannot be used. Also, these disqualify also a Kohen from serving on the feet, on the hands, on the forehead, on the etc. A negative commandment, one who is a Baal Mum cannot go in, a Kohen that is a Baal Mum, he cannot even go, not he can't serve, that's another thing, but he can't even be in the holy temple from the altar inward. Can't. Next, a Kohen that's impure, a Kohen that has touched a dead body or been somewhere with his dead body, is not allowed to serve in the holy temple. If he does, punishment is death from heaven. A Kohen cannot truma. Now we have a lot of laws of truma. Truma is part of the produce that has to be taken out by the farmers and given to the Kohen. So some say there's no measure to it. It's a good thing to give 1/50th and 1/100th. In any case, this portion is called truma, and the punishment for a impure person eating it is death from heaven. So if a Kohen is impure, only the Kohenim can eat it. If a non-Kohen eats it, also the punishment is the same. A non-Kohen. So eating truma is only a Kohen that is not been, or let's put it this way, a Kohen that is pure in tahor. If a Kohen touched a dead body or whatever, he's not allowed to eat truma. Another thing, a non-Kohen cannot eat truma. Truma, this is this portion. It has to be taken out from a farmer has to take out from his produce what's called truma. Let's say that's 1/100th, but then he has to take out and give that to the Kohen. Then he has to take out 1/10 and give that. That's called Meiser Rishon, and give that to the Levi. And then Meiser Sheni, he has to take up to Jerusalem and eat. And then from the Meiser that he gave to the Levi has to take out a little bit of truma and give that to the Kohen. So it comes out that a farmer has to take three things out from his produce. He has to take out truma and meiser, and then also if he wants to eat it, he has to can eat it only in Jerusalem. Meiser Sheni has to take out second meiser, and the Levi that he gets the meiser rishon, he has to take out also a small portion of what he has and give it to the Kohen. That's called truma and meiser. Okay, a halala, a woman that is disqualified from getting married to a Kohen cannot eat truma. Truma belongs to the Kohen, and he can give it to his servants and to his wife. But if his wife is not fit for him, he can't give it to her to eat. A negative commandment, not to eat tevel. Tevel is food that there's truma mixed in it. In other words, food that you have not yet taken the truma out of. It's called tevel. Or that got a truma mixed in there, and you don't, you know where it is. You don't know what is the truma. So you have to. It's a big problem. That's called tevel. A positive commandment that when you sacrifice a sacrifice, it also cannot have any blemishes on it. The sacrifices, the animal has to be without any blemishes, and there all the blemishes are listed. Negative commandment. You're not even allowed to sanctify for the temple an animal that has a blemish on it. You're not allowed to put a blemish in an animal so as to make it disqualified for sacrificing. And then you might think, well, you can redeem it. You can redeem it. You're not allowed to put a blemish in a sacrificial animal. Of course, this is only relevant in the time of the temple, right? Negative commandment, you cannot slaughter a blemished animal in the holy temple. You're not allowed to slaughter it. You're not allowed to burn its parts on the altar. You're not allowed to throw its blood on the altar. Okay, this is a command which is relevant to us. Just give me one moment here. I just wanted to look at something. Give me a moment. Yeah. Okay. Good. Next, it is forbidden to castrate any animal. Like it says, Uba'artzachem lo ta'asu. It is forbidden to castrate animals. Animals. This is not in the time of the Holy Temple. This is even now. It's forbidden to do this. Okay. Interesting law. It is a negative commandment. You're not allowed to. You're allowed to sacrifice animals that belong. You are allowed. The non-Jews can bring sacrifices to the Holy Temple. They're allowed to. But if their sacrifices have a blemish in it, you're not allowed to sacrifice them. They can bring free will offerings to the Holy Temple. Of a non-Jew, like it says. Okay, this is relevant to us. Also, you're not allowed to offer a sacrifice in the Holy Temple that's less than 8 days old. And it's supposed to be also the same thing. You're not really supposed to slaughter animals just for your own personal use that are less than 8 days old. In the Holy Temple, it's a double transgression. Another negative commandment, and this is also relevant to us, you're not supposed to slaughter an animal. If you want to eat meat, well, don't slaughter an animal and its child on the same day. Like it says, sure, don't slaughter them in the same day. But if you happen to know, this is, of course, more relevant to the mother, because you don't know who the father is in animals. But if you do know the father is, you're also supposed to not slaughter them on the same day. You have to wait till the next day. Negative commandment, you're not allowed to do anything which will desecrate God's name, to do a sin in public. And this is going to be an interesting law we're going to see. For instance, if let's read this. We can read this. This is relevant now. This sin is there are 3 details. Again, what I'm reading from now is a book which is called Mitzvot Hashem, and it has a list of all the 613 commandments according to the Torah portions that they appear in. And this is according to the Maimonides. This is divided into 3 different, the not to, what's called defile, disgrace God's name. 2 of them are general and 1 is specific. The first one is general, that anyone that is requested that he should do a sin in a difficult time, it's a shmad, right? Let's say you're in the time of the Inquisition, and the Pope asks you to stand in public and to eat a ham sandwich. And you know that the reason wants to make you an example. That Jews are willing to go against the Torah. You're supposed to give your life. It says, if you know that this is, the intention is to show that that the Torah is less important than your life. In other words, to show them that your religion is not important. Whether we're talking about the most simple commandment, whether it's a very important commandment, or a person that's requested to do idolatry, or gilui arayos, have relations with a woman, or not even a woman, just to have relations that are forbidden. Right? They put a gun to somebody's head and says, have relations with this animal or we'll kill you. Oh, they say, you kill this person and we'll kill you. Even if it's in secret and nobody sees it, and nevertheless, you're supposed to give your life. 3 things: gilui arayos, shfichas damim, and avodah zorah. A person is supposed to give his life rather than do, like it says, lo techalalu et shem kodshi. Strange commandment. This is the commandment even nowadays. And if a person, nevertheless, because he's under duress, he does the sin, he worships this idol, but bows down to the in the church or something like that. And in order to save his life, so he says if he transgresses it, this is called Chilul Hashem. But on the other hand, he's not punishable because he was under duress. If he does it in front of 10 people, then this is called Chilul Hashem in public. So this is even worse. Okay, that's good. But if it's other sins except for these three, then if there's not 10 people watching him, and it is private, and it's not a time when the church or communism, whatever, is trying to show, right, that trying to show that your Torah and mitzvahs is not important to you, then you should do the sin and not get killed. In other words, a person in private, and they put a gun to his head and they say either worship an idol, or they say commit a sexual crime, forbidden, or they say kill this other person or we'll kill you, so you're supposed to say kill me, even if it's in private. But if any other sins, you're supposed to do. If they put their gun to your head, you're supposed to do the sin and not get killed. Unless it's the time like an inquisition or something like that, where they're trying to belittle the Torah. Right? It's just a bunch of, how do you say, ruffians or something like that. And the guy puts his head, a gun to your head, and says, etc., to do the sin, then you have to do it, unless it's one of these three. That's the first part. Second part is a person should, kishiyasa, a person does a sin that he hasn't got any pleasure in it, but he does it only to get God mad, to cast off his, they used to do it, it was very common in Israel, and on Yom Kippur, in the kibbutzim especially, that they used to make big meals and they used to eat not kosher meat and things like that. They used to specifically, on purpose, it was very well known, right? On purpose to go against God. Okay, weird idea. The third part is, those kibbutzes also used to have a big picture of Stalin on the wall. There was some of them that had big pictures of Stalin. He was called Or HaAmim, Shemesh Lamim. He was the illuminator of the world. That was the Shomer Hatzir, they're called. The third part is called that if it's a person that's important, a well-known person, and he does a sin, even though it's a very simple sin, but this is called a Chilul Hashem. He is an example of, right, they catch sometimes a rabbi, whatever, doing some, right, stealing money or something like that. That's called a big Chilul Hashem. See, look at these, that's where your rabbis are. You know. Okay, that's number one. Here's another, that's the negative side of it. You're supposed to give your life not to do one of these sins, not to defile God's name. The positive side of it is that by giving your life, you are sanctifying God's name in public. If a person has to sanctify himself, his life, to give his life for the sake of God in one way, there's nothing that's higher than that. And there's a famous story about the Baal Shem, the Beis Yosef, Rabbi Yosef Karo, that there was an angel that used to come to him and speak to him. There's a book which is called Magid Meshorim. Excuse me, this Magid Meshorim. And this book, there was an angel that used to come. You can buy the book. I don't know if it's in English. An angel would speak to the Beit Yosef. And the angel came to him and said, good news, you're going to go up to the land of Israel and you're going to die, Al Kiddush Hashem. And this is going to help the world and it's going to help you. And then afterwards, the angel came to him and said, I'm sorry, but you did something that God doesn't like. You didn't learn Mishnayos or something, and whatever it was. And you're going to get the second prize. Consolation prize was that he wrote the Shulchan Aruch. Now the Shulchan Aruch, everybody goes according to. He says, but in some ways, sanctifying God's name would have been better. This is God's standards. We don't understand how what God's standards are. But that's what it says. That's a positive side of it, is to sanctify God's name in public. Okay, and now we're going to go to the commandments of time. Time commandments, and in other words, the holidays. So let's go to the Torah portion, and let's read the Torah portion. Here we go. Ready? Okay, this is what we just finished reading about. Animals that are blemished, you can't bring them. You can't bring a blemished animal from a non-Jew also. Umiyad kol nachri, don't bring it. God said there's a shore or a kesef or aiz. This is what we read on the holidays. It has to be 7 days under its mother, and on the 8th day, only on the 8th day are you allowed to sacrifice it, to slaughter it to God. And a cow or a goat or a sheep, you're not allowed to slaughter it and its mother on the same day. It also goes to a goat or sheep. And also you have to sacrifice it for God on the same day. And by the sacrifices that you make, you should not leave until the next day. This is talking about you should slaughter the meat in order to eat it. If it has to be eaten, it has to be, you have to have the thought in order to eat it. If you have the thought to eat it at a different time, it's called pigul. Ushmartem mitzvah, you have to do my commandments, because I said, don't defile my holy name and make me holy among the Jewish people. I am God that makes you holy. This is what we just finished learning about. You're supposed to give your life rather than do sins. And it depends if there's one of these, the three big sins, Gila, Ra'at, Shvichas Damim, and Avodah Zorah, then you're supposed to give your life unconditionally. And others only if there's in front of 10 people. It's okay. I took you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am God. Ready? God said, Daber al Bnei Israel, these are the holidays that you should call them on their proper time. I am God. See if we can get to this. Ready? 6 days you should work, and on the 7th day you should rest. Shabbat. The father of all holidays, if you want to call it Jewish Independence Day, really, is Shabbat. Shabbat is the main holiday of Judaism. Shabbat is the special holiday of Judaism. Non-Jews are not allowed to keep the Shabbat. Shabbat is as a sign between God and the Jewish people. So that's the whole idea that God makes holidays. These are the holidays of God, the holy times that you should call in their proper times. On the first month, on the 14th day of the month, Pesach Lashem. By the way, today is what's called Pesach Sheni. It's the second Passover. On the 15th day of the month, that's the Chag Matzot. That's the holiday of Matzot. 7 days you should eat Matzot. Now we're going to get to this counting of the Omer. On the first day is a holiday. Don't do any work. Kol melechas avodah, you can't do. You're not allowed to do melechas avodah, but you are allowed to do to cook and to bake and to even slaughter animals. You're allowed to. Anything which deals with food, you can do. But my ochel nefesh, it's called. But anything that's just work, that hasn't got any connection to work, to eating, and you learn the laws sometimes. You'll see what exactly this includes. But anything that hasn't got to do with eating, you're not allowed to do on the Jewish holidays. There's 3 Jewish holidays from the Torah, which are Pesach, and 50 days later is Shivohot, and then the holiday of Sukkot. Those 3 times, Jews have to go up to the Holy Temple. Then there's also the holidays of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, but everybody doesn't have to go to the Holy Temple on those days. On these 3 holidays, everyone has to go up to the Holy Temple. Passover, here we see. You should sacrifice to God 7 days. On the 7th day is also a holy day, and you shouldn't do any work. What's the holiday of Passover we just finished? Speak to the Jewish people and say like this, okay, we finished the holiday of Passover. What comes after Passover? Counting the Omer. When you come into the land of Israel that I give to you, and you harvest your first harvest, and you bring an Omer, you bring a bundle, Reshit Katzirchem El Kohen, the first offering to the Kohen. And in this case, it happens to be, it says, Shetei Rishon Katsir. Omer there's a certain measure, it's called an Omer. It's what's called a tenth of an ephah. That was what it was called. It was measured in Omer. Omer was a certain measure. And then you lift up this Omer, you take it and you have to process it. In any case that you lift it up in front of God to be pleasing in front of God. The day after Shabbat, lift up the coin. And here, like we talked about before, was a big argument between the Sadukim and the Purushim. The Purushim were the regular, normal Jews. They had the power to raise the dead. We talked about this a lot of times. And the Sadukim were big time, super troublemakers. Who were the successful ones? The Sadukim. They made a lot of trouble, and they were in the Sanhedrin, and they made everybody crazy. And they said that you have to offer the Passover offering the day after Shabbat. In other words, the first Shabbat after Passover, which doesn't come out because then it comes out that Shavuot is at a different time. Anyway, the law is not like them, but they made a lot of trouble. This is not the first argument that they had. So they said the day after Shabbat. What is it? Rashi says the day after Shabbat, the day after the Yom Tov Rishon of Pesach. Because if you say it's the first day after the Shabbat, so then, right, if you say it's the first day after Shabbat, so you don't know which Shabbat is it. You don't know what you'll never know also when the holiday of Shavuot is. It's 50 days after Shabbat. It could be that Shavuot will come 7 days after Passover. It can't be that the counting of the Omer is only 50 days. That's what we're going to see. Here we go. All right, so it says you lift up the Omer. On this day that you lift up the Omer, you have to make a sacrifice in the time of the temple, of course. A sheep which is 1 year old for an olah, and you bring a mincha, etc., a bread offering, and you bring wine, and you bring oil. And it says, until you bring this offering, you're not allowed to eat any bread from the new harvest. Until that day, until you bring the Omer. Okay, now you have to count from the day after the day after Passover, from the day that you bring, he says, Mimachar Yom Tov, from the day that you bring the Omer, you have to count 7 complete weeks. Sheva Shavuot Tamimot Yom. And that's why the holiday of Shavuot is called Shavuot. Shavuot means the holiday of weeks. And technically, according to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, it could be that the holiday of Shavuot comes out on a different day, a day before the day of giving of the Torah, of Matan Torah. Because Matan Torah is in the 7th day of Sivan, and it could be like if a person goes across the international date line, that the dates that he counts might change, and so he might lose a day or gain a day. Okay, in any case, usually it comes out, and that's the way it is now, that after these 7 weeks, we count 49 days. The 50th day is the holiday of Shavuot, and we're going to get to this, and I would like to do some of the commentary over here. I hope we have time. Until the day after Shabbat, the Shvit, until after 7 weeks, you'll count 50 days. And on the 50th day, you make a new offering to God. This new offering, you have to bring 2 breads. Solit chametz te'afena. You have to cook it chametz. Now, in the Holy Temple, it says that you're not allowed to bring chametz into the Holy Temple. Called se'or, called davash lo takriv lifnei Hashem. You're not allowed to bring any leavened bread. That's leavened. Is that what it's called? Yeah, leavened. You're not allowed to bring any bread that rises up into the temple. Except there was also the Thanksgiving offering, the Todah, that you could also bring. They brought 40 loaves of bread, 10 of each type, and 10 of those were chametz. That was the only exception, the Thanksgiving offering. And this offering was unusual because it comes after Passover, where you must eat chametz. And all sacrifices in the Holy Temple were chametz until you come to the holiday of the giving of the Torah, and then they would bring these 2 lechem chametz. They would bring 2 of them and offer them in the Holy Temple. And you would sacrifice on this bread 7 sheep which were pure, 1 year old, etc., etc. and there will be an offering to God, and also minchatam. Also, you brought bread with them, additional bread offering, and right, because and every time you brought a sheep or a cow or a goat, there were certain standard amounts of bread offerings you had to bring, and also wine libations, nischayim. Ishay, a offering up rech nichoach l'Hashem, a pleasant smell to God. In other words, God is pleased when you do what He says. Okay, you also bring a goat, and you lift this up. This is called the first bread offering. Lechem bikurim in front of God. It's called Chag Bikurim also. And this day we'll call, this is also a holiday, and this is the holiday of Chag HaShivohot. And here it says, and here it just throws this in, and the Or HaChaim asks, what's this doing over here? Whenever you harvest your land, leave the peah. Remember we learned about that last week? You have to leave the peah, the corners of the field, and the leket, ketzircha, and also the grains that fall down, the sheaves that fall down, don't gather them up. Rather, for poor people and for the ger, the non-Jews that have accepted on the seven Noahide commandments that live in the land of Israel, leave them. I am God. So let's look back here a little bit at the commentary. We got up to the there. Okay, you should count for the day after Shabbat Miyom, the day after you brought the Omer, 7 pure, complete weeks should be. This is the mitzvah of counting the Omer that we do. So let's look at the Or HaChaim HaKadosh. Let's look at the Or HaChaim HaKadosh, what he has to say about this mitzvah of counting the Omer. Safartim lechem. Omer lechem, it says you should count to you. What does it mean count to you? It should say count. Usfartem imachrat, and you should count from the day after Passover, from the day that you bring this Omer, the day after Passover, 7 complete words. Why does it say count to you? This word seems to be extra. So it must be telling us something. Says the Or HaChaim, what is it telling us? Why does it say lachem? L'sad she'etzav Hashem, because God commanded to count these 7 weeks. And these 7 weeks are, it's a commandment, of course, to count every day, but it's for you. What does it mean for you? Omer is the rabbi saying in the Zohar, in the book the Zohar. Zohar was written by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who his day of passing away is going to be this Friday, this Thursday night, Friday. And there's going to be hundreds of thousands of Jews, as every year, going up to Miron, where he's buried. I'll be there also, God willing. But we'll have class. On Thursday, we'll have class. I'm going up on Wednesday night. If you want, by the way, you want to give me names, you want to send me names, you can send it. I think you know my email address, or you can just send it over here. Email is better than I have it, because when I turn this off, I turn it off. My email is ravbolton@gmail.com. Rav Bolton, RAVBOLTON. And just send me a list of names, as many as you want. I'll take them up there and I'll read them, God willing. Last year I went up there, I must have had 100 names. So you're more than welcome. You can send it to me tomorrow. We'll be also tomorrow, and also Wednesday we'll have classes. So you have time to get a list of names. Omer, the Ran says in the Zohar. So why does it say Safartem Lochem to you? It says Latzad Shahayu Batumat Mitzrayim, because when the Jews left Egypt, they were in the defilement of Egypt. V'rotza Hashem, and God wanted these Daveg to connect himself to this nation. Done Boka Mishpad Nida, because the Jewish people were like a Nida. They were like a woman in the time of her menstruation. And therefore a woman has to count, it says 7 clean days before she can be with her husband. So God commanded that they should also count 7 weeks, 7 times 7. that then they would be able and pure to unite with God at Mount Sinai, because God was like the groom and the Jewish people were like the bride. Okay, there's different opinions what it is, but about what it is. It is a commandment to count all the days. Yes, it is. Is it a commandment that each and every day is a separate commandment, or are they all one big commandment or not? There's different opinions, but factually, it's not really that important to us. Maybe a little bit, if you made a mistake and you forgot to count, what should you do? So, it's a good question. It's a question that we can deal with, but the whole entire commandment of counting these 50 days, 49 days, that is from the Torah. And what exactly is the status of each and every separate day? Is that just one part of this commandment, or is each day a commandment in itself? Is a bit of a question. But the fact is, everybody makes a blessing on each and every one of the days. Is the blessing from the rabbis or from the Torah? Nice question. But anyways, we make a blessing every day. Okay, so it says the Rebbe. What it says the Orach Hayam. What is the purpose of counting? Why does it say lachem? It says because the purpose of counting these days is to fix the Jewish people up, physically, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. Even though that a woman is, in order to be pure for her husband, has to count 7 pure days, and here we're talking about 7 weeks. But this is because there was so much impurity that the Jews had when they were in Egypt. So therefore, Yisrael Shir Hatamim Deim Kikein Mishpatam. And also God demanded a very high level of purity from the Jews. So it says, look what I said somewhere. That's why it says, Safartem Lachem, count for yourself. What does it mean? The reason for these counting is because in order to make you pure, without this Tekef Haya Hashem Noten, if God would have given them immediately the Torah, they wouldn't have been able to accept it. As it was, you see what happened. As soon as Moses left, also they couldn't, even afterwards, after they counted all these days, they could only take the first 2 commandments. After that, they said, we can't take any more. Moses, you do. That's why it says the day after Shabbat, and it doesn't say on Shabbat itself, because this is the way of the counting. The counting has to be, all of the days have to be complete. So because the 15th day of Nisan, which was the day of Shabbat, was said here, so a little bit of the day, they were still in the late day of Egypt, right? On the 15th day of Nisan, they were still in Egypt. They only left in the middle of that day. Therefore, God commanded them to count the day after they left Egypt. In other words, so there will be one complete day. So even though that this was back then, I mean, now we've already left Egypt, right? So why should we count now? So it says this same thing also we should do in the same period of time of the year, every single year, because just like the secret of God is known to those people who know the secrets, and this is of course explained in Chassidut, that whatever happened back then, if you pshat zichron avar b'yom Shabbat, zichron ki sheshet yomim, etc., hamaskil yovin. Just like when God created the world in 6 days, and the 7th day was Shabbat, so there was only one time. So he says, really, it repeats itself every year. Well, the same thing is with every single holiday, etc. So it says, the day after Shabbat, what does it mean? From now on, before you go to the land of Israel, the day after Shabbat, and when did they start to count? The mitzvah of counting the Omer was after they brought the offering they couldn't bring this offering in going out of Egypt. So the 50 days they counted when they left Egypt in order to receive the Torah. But this was only telling them that this is the day that they were going to offer the Omer in 40 years when they entered the land of Israel. But the fact of the matter is, when they left Egypt, they didn't offer up any Omer. So therefore it says, when you come into the land of Israel, you have to remember that these 49 days between going out of Egypt and receiving the Torah, spiritually, the same thing is happening as happened back then when we left Egypt. And I would like to really do a little bit more over here from the Kli Yakar, because it's very, very beautiful what he writes. But he says the reason why Shavuot is not mentioned clear in the Torah. Why doesn't it say, right, Chag HaShavuot Yaseh Lachem? Why doesn't it just says after you counted 7 months, then make a holiday? It doesn't say what the holiday is. There's another example of this, and that is Rosh Hashanah. The holiday of Rosh Hashanah doesn't say in the Torah. It just says on the first day of the 7th month, you have to make a holiday. It's a Yom Teruah. You have to make it. It doesn't say that it's called Rosh Hashanah or what it is. So essentially, what he says is because a person always has to be going out of Egypt, and he always has to be receiving the Torah, especially receiving the Torah. A person always has to be receiving the Torah all the time, every day. And a person always has to be returning to God like on Rosh Hashanah all the time. And that's the reason why these two holidays especially are not mentioned. God willing, maybe we'll do the Or HaChaim tomorrow. Meanwhile, have a good day with Mashiach now.